Hi there. I'm so excited to share this episode with you today, and I'm recording a little prelude to the episode, if you will. This episode was originally recorded in January 2021, and I'm re-releasing it today in August 2024. And the reason is this is actually one of my favorite episodes and my favorite topics, which is, what are the things that people who love someone with arthritis or who are a support person for someone with arthritis, what are the things that they need to know, particularly about inflammatory autoimmune forms of arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, and other similar conditions? So, because one of my inspirations for this episode, or the reasons for it to come to be in the first place, is that one of the things that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety and pain for some, psychological pain for people with autoimmune arthritis is that feeling misunderstood by friends, family, coworkers, other people in our environment. And so that's kind of a challenge to cope with that has nothing to do with the actual symptoms of the disease itself, right? It has to do with lack of understanding in our social environment. So that is, I always try to separate things into solvable problems versus perpetual problems. That's for sure like a partially solvable problem. Like if the people need more education, we can partially solve that by providing that education. The reason I don't think it's fully solvable is that at a certain point, each person needs something and wants something different. So there does have to be like some communication between you and your loved ones about specifically, what do you want for how can they best support you? So the reason I'm recording this kind of reintroduction is just to explain that I might, refer to something that's maybe out of date or something like that. And also, I just wanted to, I guess, pull the curtain back a little bit and share that, whenever I go back, so now it's 2024 and this episode was recorded in 2021, I'm always a little bit nervous because I think I'm a little bit hard on myself. So I'm nervous to listen to an old episode because I'm like, oh no, what if I say something that I disagree with, or I just don't think it was stated very well. But I'm often pleasantly surprised. And in this episode, I really think that these 8 things that everyone who loves someone with arthritis should know, I really stand by those still today. And I do want to make sure to mention that these are not just ideas that I came up with, but also I had put out a call for people's comments and ideas on Instagram. So you're going to hear on this episode, not just from me, but from a lot of other people who live with arthritis about their perspective. So, I think this is a great episode. That's why I am re-releasing it. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, just know that back when I first recorded this, I did not keep the video of it. I just did audio because at that time I envisioned the podcast as being audio only. But now and for the last few years, I've been doing videos of every episode as well and putting them on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing my face right now for the intro, but you're not going to, the rest of it's going to be just like a blank screen. So that's okay. You can just listen while you're doing other stuff. So that's it for right now. I just wanted to give this little prelude to the episode, and I hope you're all doing well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to delve into today's episode. It's not just joint pain, 8 things everyone who loves someone with arthritis should know. So my inspiration for this solo episode is that in my, 18 years of living with rheumatoid arthritis and many, volunteer experiences and social media interactions, I've noticed a trend where people who live with inflammatory forms of arthritis in particular, like rheumatoid and psoriatic and, lupus, ankylosing spondylitis, there is a lot of misunderstandings about these conditions, especially because the word arthritis often makes it sound less serious than it really is. So when people think of the word arthritis technically means joint inflammation and joint pain, but these inflammatory or autoinflammatory or autoimmune forms of rheumatic diseases that cause arthritis have many, many more symptoms, as those of us who live with them know. So there also just are a lot of other things that those of us who live with these conditions wish that our loved ones knew. And sometimes it's hard to have those hard conversations. It's hard to have hard conversations with our loved ones because you don't want to seem like you're patronizing them, but there could just be awkward dynamics. So sometimes it's just easier to hear a message from a neutral third party. So that's why I'm hoping to deliver some messages to these loved ones, whether it's friends, family members, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, coworkers. Sometimes it just helps to hear from someone else. So I want to help clarify a lot of the misunderstandings of these invisible conditions to make people who have them feel more understood and embraced and supported. So here we go. Number one is we want you to learn what the disease is and what it isn't. So it's understandable how many misunderstandings there are or misconceptions there are about autoimmune and autoinflammatory forms of rheumatic diseases because they are very complicated. And so here are just a few things that I want to let you know. So first is that inflammatory forms of arthritis affect the whole body, not just the joints. For example, the autoimmune response can cause your immune system to attack not only your synovial lining of your joints, in the example of rheumatoid arthritis, it can also cause inflammation of your heart, your lungs, and other previously healthy tissues, including those of your eyes. And they also cause, these diseases often cause fatigue, widespread fatigue. And so for this episode, I got some quotes from other patients living with similar conditions, and I wanted to share a few of those as well. So, it's not just me, it's others have these same wishes for you to understand things better. So, Stephanie Labonte at Instagram, Stephanie Labonte, says, I want you to know that this has good and bad days, but I am not going to heal or get better soon. I can only manage my health. So this sounds more straightforward, but it actually illustrates a really important difference, which is that when people get sick with like an acute illness, something like the flu or a really bad cold or sinus infection, there's a natural like progression, right? That it starts off, you feel hurt or sick, and then you slowly heal and get better. And in our culture, we're so used to saying things like get better soon or get well soon, that when you have a autoimmune disease or an autoinflammatory form of rheumatic disease that people often put under the umbrella of arthritis, it is a lifelong chronic condition. You might go into remission at some point, but you will always be considered to have it. You have this illness the rest of your life at this point until there's a cure. So understanding that you can manage your symptoms, you can manage your quality of life, but it's not going to go away is a really important thing to understand. Another thing is, like I started mentioning earlier, that it affects the whole body, not just your joints. So Chai Chat 23 says, I wish they would just research the basics of my illness. I don't have energy to educate everyone. So it really does go a long way if you can show that you proactively have researched someone else's condition, the person that you love, whether it's, again, a spouse, coworker, family member. And I want to encourage you to find valid sources of information. In general, the rule of thumb is to look at foundations or nonprofits or e.edu organizations like, Stanford.edu or Harvard.edu. Those are ones that tend to have a good amount of curation of their content or quality control. You also want to just look at who authored the article. So for example, I have a master's in occupational therapy, which is a health field. And so I'm a licensed health professional. And so when I write an article or a blog post, there's a level of, quality associated with that. Obviously the same would be, if it was a doctor or a PhD person versus somebody who doesn't have any training. I'm not saying this to be a snob, because there's a time and place for patients to share their own expertise that they gain over time. But there's a difference if you're trying to give like medical kind of related information and education, if you don't have any medical training, it's hard to, you don't know what you don't know. So it's not like anyone who didn't have a health degree isn't smart. No, a lot of patients become experts in their own care, and that's really, really great. But broadly speaking, you want to, when you're first learning about the disease, I really encourage you to look at valid sources of information that have been, you know, passed through some sort of review process, again, like it happens with nonprofits like the Arthritis Foundation or Society for Arthritis or European League Against Rheumatism. And so, yeah, just look at who authored the article, look if they have a conflict of interest. Obviously, if it's somebody who writes an article about, diet and nutrition and rheumatoid arthritis, and they're also selling their own, special dietary supplement, they might have a conflict of interest to maybe make you want their supplement more, right, than somebody else who is more of a unbiased opinion. So it's really complicated, but just I think a good starting point is to look at those valid sources of information. I do have a free training on this called How to Use Social Media Without Wanting to Tear Your Hair Out, because it is, or so, how to use social media for health information without wanting to tear your hair out, because it's really hard. Like, I think again, all information has some validity to it, but you have to just kind of know how to like put your detective lens on and take things with a grain of salt. There's another quick misconception again that I mentioned earlier, is that, oh, it's just arthritis. It's just joint pain here or there, or that you just have it in one finger. If it's osteoarthritis, which is wear and tear arthritis that is typically in just one or two joints, it is not a systemic disease. It is just a phenomenon in a joint. But these autoimmune, autoinflammatory forms of arthritis, they are not just in your joints. So Meg's Twisted Tree says it's not just stiff joints that everyone has, and a little ibuprofen will take care of it. She's saying it's not the case that you can just take ibuprofen and it's better. So those are a couple of things to just start off with. Again, if you love someone with inflammatory arthritis and you take the time to get to know their disease and understand it, believe me, it's going to go a long way. And, Britton B says from Instagram, it's okay to ask questions and do your own research. We don't have to pretend it's not a thing. So that was a good one. Another person, Alia, says, my parents didn't give me RA via genes. We just happen to share genetic material, but it's not their fault. So there can be lots of different misconceptions, lots of guilt people might feel because it can run in families, but we don't want to play the blame game. So that's point one, again, is we want you to learn what the disease is and what it isn't. So it's a lot more complicated than just joint pain. Number two is that the fatigue can be just as bad as the pain for things like rheumatoid arthritis. So the best analogy I like to use is it's like when you have a really bad flu where you're so exhausted, you can't even practically get out of bed to walk to the bathroom. You just have no energy left. That is what a flare-up of fatigue feels like. To make things even more complicated, as I said earlier, these diseases are complicated, that the fatigue and the pain don't necessarily flare up or occur at the same time. You can be feeling really good in terms of joint pain, but then have a really horrible flare of fatigue, or vice versa. Researchers used to think that they always went in tandem, but the latest research is showing that's not the case necessarily. So know that, again, if the person is not having horrible joint pain, they might still have a severe negative effect on their quality of life just due to the fatigue, because fatigue is required for every single daily activity. And it's much harder to find workarounds for fatigue than pain, in my experience. Like if my hand hurts, I can use a different strategy. I can use a life hack to perform the same action I need to perform, like opening a jar. I can use a jar opener. I can ask a friend to open it for me. But if you have so much fatigue that you can barely get out of bed, it's hard to work around that, right? There are definitely strategies, which I do teach in my online course, the Rheumatoid Arthritis Roadmap. But at the end of the day, it's just really, really hard a lot of the time. So a few kind of tips you can do as a loved one of someone with arthritis or inflammatory arthritis is warn the person with arthritis in advance about plans so that they can conserve their energy, and then also be flexible and allow the person to reschedule at the last minute if needed. So what's really, really important about that is that we don't always know, us patients don't always know when our fatigue is going to flare up. I personally, after 18 years, have started noticing some trends. For example, I have some triggers for fatigue, such as really, really hot environments or really, really cold, or overdoing it in terms of exercise or exertion on a particular day. And I have like a body rhythm. My circadian rhythm is pretty predictable, that I'm a morning person, and I have a really big dip in energy in the mid afternoon. And then I get, if I take a rest, I can kind of replenish my energy. So you can learn how to schedule things in your life so that you can, you know, go out and be with friends. But if you have one of these diseases, you can end up feeling really guilty if you have to cancel plans last minute. Because even if I know 9 times out of 10 I'm going to feel good after a nap, there could be, a really important like meet up with a friend, and I take a nap and I'm like, okay, I'm going to conserve my energy. And then I wake up and I'm like, I still feel bad. I don't have any energy to go. So no, the friend being flexible and understanding can go a really, really long way. So we don't feel guilty having to change plans at the last minute. I also wanted to share a quote from the Invisible Me Warriors PBC on Instagram. She said, "The exhaustion is awful, and we don't want to be told, I feel tired too, just drink coffee." So sometimes friends and family, they might be well-meaning, but they might kind of end up minimizing the suffering of the person with inflammatory arthritis. So just be cautious about the assumptions you make. Anna Fit and Beautiful says the fatigue is real. We require more rest and sleep, period. Yes. So one of the causes of fatigue is that when you have an autoimmune or autoinflammatory response, your body is using up a lot of energy trying to attack your own previously healthy joints. So you don't have as much energy to do other things, in the same way that, when you're sick with like a virus, your immune system is really busy trying to attack and eradicate that virus. And that's why you don't have as much energy either, to simplify things overly. But so know that we do often need more rest and sleep. Also know, though, that fatigue is different than tiredness. So tiredness resolves with sleep, and fatigue does not resolve with sleep necessarily. So that's one of the ways you can differentiate between the two of them. But that said, is a little complicated, because getting adequate sleep can help prevent fatigue or make the fatigue feel less intense. So it's not that they're completely unrelated, but just know that it's not the same as just a normal person's sleepiness or tiredness. Layla Schneider says, "Your support means the world to me. When I say it doesn't hurt, what I mean is that the pain is bearable right now. I wish I could be more useful in home chores, and I hate the thought of being a burden to everyone. I can feel guilty when I can't spend time with them. And when I'm not nice to you, please remember I feel pain, nausea, and stomachache every day." I thought that was really powerful, because it shows it's not just that we have to deal as the patients with this fatigue and the way it feels. It's that we know that it affects our social life and our environment, our ability to do things like simple household chores. It can make us have a lot of big emotions about what our bodies can't do. So I thought that that was a really good point. And another person who wants to be anonymous says, "I want you to know it is chronic. I can't just take a pill that cures it, and I still have bad days." So that kind of goes a little bit with what I was saying earlier about just understanding what the disease is and isn't, and understanding the difference between, a disease that you can manage through medications and lifestyle factors, and a disease that you can actually cure or make go away. So that idea of guilt and being a burden really leads to my third point, or my third message, which is that these conditions don't just affect the body, they also affect your mind and your emotions. So in general, there's lots and lots of data showing people who have arthritis or chronic pain are at much greater risk of depression and or anxiety disorders than the general public, which I think, makes a lot of sense. If you're living in pain and fatigue, it's going to affect your mood to some degree. You're going to have feelings about that. It's only human, right, to have feelings. And we all, I think, universally prefer to feel healthy and energetic than we do to feel pain and lack of energy. So just know that, again, it's not whether I'm having a good day or a bad day is not just dictated by my pain levels or my fatigue. It's also about my emotional relationship to my condition. And the thing that's been the biggest trigger for me personally has been uncertainty. This is something I've worked a lot on in therapy. So I used to think uncertainty was a problem and I needed to just solve it by figuring out what was certain. So, for example, there's an uncertainty when you first get diagnosed. No doctor can tell you with certainty which medication is going to be, quote unquote, the best for you. Which medication are you going to definitely do well on? They can take the available research and data and definitely say, look, given all this research we have, this is what it, in your particular circumstance with your physical presentation, family history, blood work, and physical exam, this is what we recommend. Because in general, the data shows that this is the best course of action. It still doesn't mean that they can say for sure what's going to happen to you. And so I used to think, oh my gosh, these doctors are so mean sometimes, not telling me, like they're not able to tell me what's going to happen. Like I'm so frustrated about this. But then I just realized that it's just actually just a reality of life that nobody knows for certain. And I know I've talked about this in multiple episodes, right? And the global pandemic that started in 2020 is a really perfect example of this, right? You might have had your 2020 completely planned out. You knew what you were going to do. You had your goals, you had your strategies, but then life happens, right? Like things can come out of nowhere and suddenly change all of your plans. So that is true whether or not you have a health condition. So for me, the journey towards acceptance of uncertainty has been really long and really hard. That once I was able to embrace, like not embrace it, but tolerate it and acknowledge that it is the reality of life, then it has become less of a struggle for me. So, so another thing that some people said is someone handling it well, this is anonymous, just because someone's handling it well doesn't mean that they're better. And I really like that point. I've had people on social media say to me like, oh, how long have you been in remission? And I've said, well, I'm not in remission. Like, oh, did I appear to be in remission? But I have pain almost every day. It's pretty mild to moderate most days, but I'm still affected by this disease. It doesn't mean that my physical symptoms are gone or my fatigue is gone. It just means I've learned how to work around it and live a full life despite it. But it does not mean that it's gone or that I don't have to struggle. Another anonymous person said, please figure out how to support us on our bad days. So, that obviously should involve some communication between the person who has the condition and the loved one, figure out what does the person need. And we're going to go a little bit more into that a little bit later. And Maria VGI says, it's excruciatingly painful and scary 24/7, and it's never going to go away. It's a part of me. Again, so understanding that, think about how scary it is to live in pain all the time and know that it's not going to go away. It's a profoundly difficult psychological experience. It doesn't mean that we can't learn coping skills. I mean, that's like one of my passions is sharing all the coping skills I've learned. But I think it's important for people who love someone with arthritis to acknowledge how difficult and how serious it can be. So number 4 is that these diseases and conditions affect each person differently. So just know that if you know someone else who's had rheumatoid arthritis, for example, it doesn't make perfect sense to compare your friend's, condition to the other person's condition. For example, I was the captain of my college soccer team. I was very, very successful as an athlete in college, and I started feeling really, really bad my junior year, or kind of between my sophomore and junior year. And then I got diagnosed the summer before my senior year, and I quit the soccer team because I wasn't feeling well enough to, and I wanted to focus on my health. And I remember the coach at the time said, well, I had a friend in college, she had RA and she played. So she was trying to I don't know, I can't get into her mind, but I think she was potentially trying to encourage me by saying, hey, like, just because you have RA doesn't mean you can't play college soccer, which is true. But that doesn't, because one person who's had RA and who's already gone through the process of like finding the right medication for them and finding the right way to manage it is different than somebody who got diagnosed like 2 weeks before the soccer season is supposed to start. That's a totally different scenario. It's a much more difficult, uncertain time in someone's life. And so, I know that was her job is like, right, as a soccer coach, her job is to make the best team. And I was a successful player, so she was trying to get me to play. But I didn't appreciate that because it made me feel like you're just trying to make me feel more guilty for not feeling capable of playing, or that it was the right choice for my health. Like, so, it's complicated. So just say, yeah, just because you might have found someone on Instagram who is able to, do a certain workout program or do a certain supplement and feels really good, that doesn't mean that someone else who tries that same thing is going to have that same degree of success. Our conditions are all really complicated and really different. Katrina had a really good point, which is this disease is not a one size fits all, and medications don't equal cured. I want you to know I'm proud of never giving up on myself. I awake each day hoping for a good day. Sometimes I wish I didn't have it as I get tired of dealing with it. I feel like a burden at times that I am not my disease. My energy changes on a whim. So, that again, she said, it's not one size fit all. It's not that everyone has severe progressive RA. It's not that everyone has mild RA and can go running through fields of flowers. It's just different. So that's number 4. Number 5 is that daily symptoms can be really unpredictable. So Shelly Steele on Instagram says, every day is different and challenging. Anonymous says, just because I feel okay now doesn't mean I'm going to be feeling okay tomorrow. So really know that our symptoms fluctuate daily and hourly. This is me talking now. We can't always predict when we're going to feel good. And again, that's the hardest part for me. Like, it affects everything, right? Planning your job. Should I go to grad school? Especially when you get diagnosed young, when should I have my wedding? Like, what if I wake up on my wedding day feeling a massive flare up? It can be really challenging. So, the symptoms day to day can fluctuate, but also the yearly disease progress can fluctuate between people. So one person might have a progressive pattern where they get progressively worse over time, and that is the typical pattern is considered a progressive disease. But some people have more like relapses and remissions, where they go into remission for a long, long time. So it's hard to know at the beginning which one you're going to be. So M. Haggerty says, I ask that people warn me about plans as far ahead as possible, and it makes it easier to rest accordingly. This has really helped me, especially with young people. You can't ask me at 9 o'clock at night to go out at 9 or 7 o'clock at night to go out at 9 p.m. But if I can plan ahead, it's more likely that I can make it. I liked that. Also, Anonymous says, I want you to know I'm not suddenly better when I'm having a good day or a week. Someone else, Anonymous, says, we can't be treated as porcelain dolls. Let us dance knowing we will pay for it later. And then Sophia Webb says, I will always have this, and it is a day-by-day basis. A good day can still have some pain. So I think one of the most painful things emotionally that can happen to somebody with this disease is for someone to start judging them about like, oh, well, I saw you come out last week. Why are you saying you can't come out this week? Come out meaning like go hang out. Back in the old days when we could actually hang out. Depending on where you are in the world right now, you might still be able to hang out in person. But the point is, yeah, some days I have to wear splints. Some days I have to take a 3-hour nap in the afternoon. Some days I can't open a peanut butter jar, but some days I feel great and I'm dancing and I'm running around and happy. So, but if I say, oh, I can't, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling good today. I'm not feeling well today. And I can't come, let's say, go to your baby shower or something. We don't want the person to say, well, wait a minute, you were out dancing last week. Like, are you just using this as an excuse? Please like presume competence. This is a great just overall life advice. Presume that the person is doing their best, because we really are. And actually, this brings us to point number 6, which is we want credit for how hard we're fighting, even when we seem normal. Our symptoms are often invisible, and we don't feel we get credit for how hard we fight. So Anonymous says, I want them to not discount the fight. I manage so much, so well for how tired I am. I'm pretty sure I speak for a lot of people to agree with Anonymous, and that, if I'm having a great day, again, it's because I've worked really hard to have a good day. It's not like I'm all better now. PDX Fashionista from Portland says, I mask a lot. So while I don't look like I'm in pain, in reality, I hover around a 7 to 10 most days. So really, please remember that you cannot tell how much pain someone's in just by looking at them. Diana Rosas, 23, says, I'm trying to get better, trying to have energy and need less sleep. I'm trying to show up. I rarely know what any day in the future will look like. I can only do today. So I really loved that. And of course, I have to put in a Taylor Swift reference because I am a huge Taylor Swift fan. Those of you who know me know this. And she has a great song from her second to latest album called Folklore. And the song is called This Is Me Trying. And it's a really kind of subtle song, but it just says, I want you to know that this is me trying. Like if I'm always trying kind of thing. Like I'm not trying. So please presume that I'm trying my best. Mari says, when I have a flare, I can still function. My spoons are a tad low, but I can still do things. So that's a good illustration that again, it can be different for each person. Some people can still function during a flare. Some have to be in bed 24/7. And WS Mommy says, see the tasks I do and reinforce that you know that I am not being lazy. Yeah, it's a terrible feeling to be trying really, really hard and then be accused of being lazy or using excuses. That is not the recommended way, according to me. The next point is sometimes we need problem solving and sometimes we need empathy and acceptance. So this is one of the best pieces of marriage advice I've ever gotten, actually, which is I got it from somebody at a wedding once that my husband and I were sitting next to, and we asked them because we were engaged. We said, "What is your best marriage advice?" And they said, when one person starts venting about an issue or a problem, the other person asks at the very beginning, is this a listening problem or is this a solving problem? Which means, is this a problem that you want to talk about and have me just listen and empathize with you about? Or is this a problem that you want me to think as I'm listening to you about solving it or finding solutions? Because when it comes to living with a chronic illness, a chronic condition like rheumatoid arthritis or similar rheumatic diseases, a lot of times there isn't a way to solve the problem. A lot of times we do just need empathy and acceptance. And I think that can be threatening to people sometimes who are problem solvers. Like, for example, my husband's an engineer, and that's one of the things I love the most about him is that he's a great problem solver. But the difficulty about that is that I've learned that I need to be communicate when I just need him to listen or empathize as opposed to solving, because there aren't always solutions to the problems that we have. So, there's another great resource I would recommend for marriages in particular, but honestly, I use these principles for, parenting and for other relationships too, which is, it's John Gottman, Dr. John Gottman, a world-renowned marriage researcher, wrote a book called The 7 Principles to Make Marriage Work. It has a lot of great tips for, again, communication and differentiating. He calls it solvable problems versus perpetual problems. So in a marriage, for example, it maybe a solvable problem is something like, your spouse's alarm is waking you up, or they're like hitting snooze 5 times. Well, they can solve that. Versus maybe a perpetual problem might be that, let's say someone tends to run late. You could solve that, but for some people, that's just going to be a perpetual problem, and it's better to just work on like accepting it and working around it. So I really love this quote from Warriors Move Mountains. She said, I want you to know that having friends who just listen and show interest is everything. You don't need to make it better. So, there are so many things that you can say when someone's in a lot of pain that don't have to involve problem solving. Problem solving might be something like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried a heat pack? Have you tried a cold pack? Have you tried yoga? Again, sometimes people want problem solving. Sometimes they want tools and tips. And I'm a huge proponent of having a toolbox and having people in your life who can help remind you of what's in your toolbox. But other times we just need the person to say, yeah, that sounds really hard. Another great book I recommended is How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. Again, both of these books apply to all relationships, not just children, parent, or marriage. And it really teaches the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, really teaches reflective listening, where you just simply summarize what you've heard about what the person has just said and reflect it back to them. Like, wow, it sounds like you're really overwhelmed. Or it sounds like there's just a lot of uncertainty around what you should do with medications. And this is really, really difficult. Or it sounds like you've tried so many things and it's not clear if they're really working or not. So that ability to empathize and differentiate between conversations that need to be an empathetic conversation and listening conversation versus a problem solving conversation can go really, really far. Ushma from World of OT says, ask instead of assuming. So simply ask. Ask if someone wants help. Ask if they want advice. Oh, I have that. A friend of mine has the condition too. Do you want any tips from her? Or do you want me to share what worked for her? Ask instead of assuming the person knows. Katrina said, whenever you do random things for me, it's like liquid sunshine. I am grateful. I still want and expect to live a full life despite my illness. Some days I feel good, but most days are fairly tough as I have multiple conditions. So that kind of touches upon this acceptance piece, which I know I've talked about many times, but it really is a delicate balance in the long term between an improvement mindset and an acceptance mindset. You can have both, but in general, an improvement mindset is this mindset. I have to just figure out the best way to always make my pain better and always figure out how to maximize my physical health and my physical, state versus an acceptance mindset of this is what it is right now. I might, there might be something more I could be doing. There might not, but what else could I be doing with my time and energy? What would be available to me as we saw Dr. Bronnie Thompson say, what if pain wasn't a problem for me? What would that open up for my life? So that's just a really, really interesting question that we can ask ourselves. And, I think that for me, I've noticed in my own life and looking at other people's lives that there's definitely a ebb and flow, and the majority of people in the very beginning tend to take an improvement mindset, but as the years go on, that they learn how to accept, because at first it can feel good and it can feel really reassuring to think I'm going to be optimistic, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to try everything, and then we're going to conquer this. I conquered my rheumatoid arthritis, and that's wonderful. If that's happened in your life and that's been helpful for you, that's great. But that doesn't necessarily happen for everyone. Not everyone finds a way to conquer it or heal it or improve it. And so what can we do then? We have to learn how to accept it and have a good life despite pain, despite fatigue. What can we still do? Because no matter how much this disease has taken from you, you still have some abilities. You still have some gifts that other people don't have. So, it's an interesting push and pull in my experience between gratitude for what I still have and acceptance and of what I don't have anymore. House of Spoons put it really nicely. I want you to know I'm okay with my illness. I've moved on from trying to be cured to embracing the ups and downs. It's a better mindset for me to have. I thought that was just a great way to summarize it. The last thing, number 8, is simply that managing the disease itself is a job that takes a lot of cognitive time, energy, and emotional labor. So know that even if, let's say, you're in medicated remission like I was for the first 5 years, I still spent hours on the phone with insurance companies trying to make sure my medicine was covered and making sure that, because it's a specialty medications, so they have to be temperature controlled, and you can't just pick them up at the local Walgreens or Bartell's. You have to have special deliveries for them. And so there's just a lot of management. There's also symptom management. There's advocacy with your doctor. There's tracking your symptoms. There's managing your medication refills. And so, know that the person has to do a lot of work to just be a patient. And that's why I have a whole section of my rheumatoid arthritis roadmap online course all about, the logistical side of being a patient, how to do that job of being a patient, managing all those little tasks that take up time and energy. So, and that could be a big learning curve for somebody who was previously healthy and fully able-bodied and didn't really have to deal with the medical system. Depending on where you live in the world, it can be very, very challenging. That's a pretty straightforward point for the last one, trying to wind it down here. But the bonus, I did want to give one more bonus because I can't ever contain myself. So please make sure, as the loved one of someone with inflammatory arthritis, make sure to take care of your own needs as a caregiver or friend or spouse. So we know it's hard for you. We know it's hard for you to see us in pain. We know it's hard for you to see us, waylaid by fatigue. We know it's hard for you to live with the uncertainty that we have to live with as well. So there is no shame in getting therapy for yourself, for coping with how hard it is to be, to love someone with this disease, to be a family member of somebody with this disease. It's hard. So we want you to, find an outlet for yourself to get the support that you might need. There are social workers out there, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists that can help. You could also, I'm a fan of all kinds of therapies. So I really want you to know that, we appreciate the people in our lives who take the time to get to know what we're going through and ask us, how to best support us. And we want to be there for you as well. And we want you to do your own self-care and take care of yourself. So to summarize this episode, in case you're kind of zoned out, because I do that sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts. Number one, we want you to learn what the disease is and isn't, preferably from valid sources of information. Number two is that fatigue can be just as bad as pain. Number three, it doesn't just affect the body, also our mind and our emotions. Number four, it affects each person differently. Number five, the daily symptoms can be very unpredictable. Number six, we want credit for how hard we're fighting, even when we seem normal. And just remember, our symptoms are often invisible. Number seven, sometimes we need problem solving, but sometimes we need empathy and acceptance. And number eight is that managing the disease is a job that takes a lot of time and energy. And then the bonus point is just make sure to take care of your needs as a friend, caregiver, or a loved one of a person with inflammatory arthritis. So even though I've been talking for a long time, I know there's must be things that I've missed. We had 29 different submissions from Instagram, which I'm so excited about being able to share all of your wisdom and tips. But I would love to hear more if you want to comment wherever you first heard of this episode, or send me an Instagram DM or Facebook message, or email me at info at myarthritislife.net. There's numerous ways to get a hold of me, or just go to myarthritislife.net. So I'm so appreciative of your time as always. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for your support. Bye-bye.